When we think about traffic jams, we immediately imagine long lines of cars, loud horns, exhaust fumes, and endless waiting at red lights. It feels like a modern problem, something created by automobiles and rapid urban life. But the truth is surprising. Traffic congestion existed long before cars were ever invented. The only difference was the type of vehicle causing the delay. Centuries before engines and highways, cities were already struggling with overcrowded streets. Instead of cars, the roads were filled with horses, wooden wagons, handcarts, and thousands of pedestrians all trying to move at the same time. The frustration, the noise, the delays, they were all there. Human civilization has been dealing with traffic problems for much longer than we think. In the 19th century, London was one of the busiest cities in the world. It was the heart of the British Empire, a global center of trade and industry. Ships arrived daily along the River Thames carrying coal, cotton, grain, timber, and goods from colonies across the globe. But once those goods reached the docks, they had to be transported throughout the city using horse-drawn vehicles. By the 1870s, London had more than 300,000 working horses. These animals powered the entire transportation system. They pulled delivery wagons loaded with heavy cargo. They carried passengers in private carriages. They operated public horse-drawn omnibuses, which were early versions of buses. Everything moved because of horses. The streets, however, were not designed for such volume. Most roads were narrow, paved with uneven cobblestones, and often covered in mud. There were no traffic lights, no painted lanes, no organized traffic control system as we know today. Movement depended on shouting, hand signals, and patience. London Bridge was one of the worst congestion points. Historical records suggest that around 8,000 vehicles crossed the bridge daily in the late 19th century. Imagine thousands of wagons and carriages trying to pass over a relatively narrow stone bridge. If one vehicle broke down, the entire flow stopped. And breakdowns were common. Wooden wheels cracked under heavy loads. Iron rims bent, axles snapped, horses became exhausted or frightened. When a wagon broke down in a tight street or on a bridge, it could take hours to clear. Workers had to unload goods by hand, detach horses, and physically move the damaged vehicle aside. During this time, hundreds of vehicles would remain stuck behind it. Drivers shouted at one another. Passengers grew impatient. Workers were late to factories. Merchants missed market hours. Delays cost money. Traffic congestion was not just an inconvenience, it had economic consequences. But there was another major issue that modern traffic rarely deals with: waste. Each horse produced around 10 to 15 kilograms of manure every single day. With hundreds of thousands of horses working daily, the amount of waste accumulating on city streets was enormous. Sanitation systems struggled to keep up. During hot weather, the smell was overwhelming. In rainy conditions, manure mixed with mud, creating slippery and hazardous streets. By the late 1800s, newspapers began warning about what became known as the Great Horse Manure Crisis. Some experts predicted that cities would become unlivable within decades if transportation methods did not change. They feared streets would be buried under layers of waste. This problem was not limited to London. New York City faced similar challenges. Around 1900, New York had more than 100,000 working horses. Manhattan streets were packed with wagons, streetcars pulled by animals, delivery carts, and pedestrians. Accidents were frequent. Delays were common. Waste management became a constant struggle. Even earlier in history, traffic congestion existed. In ancient Rome, nearly 2,000 years ago, the streets were so crowded with carts that Julius Caesar introduced one of the earliest known traffic laws. He banned wheeled vehicles from entering the city during daylight hours. Deliveries were only allowed at night to reduce daytime congestion. This law proves that traffic problems are not a modern invention, They are as old as large cities themselves. Medieval European cities had extremely narrow streets because they were originally built for pedestrians and small carts. As trade expanded and populations grew, these streets became bottlenecks. Market days were chaotic. Farmers arrived with produce. Merchants transported goods. Citizens traveled in carriages. Everyone shared the same limited space. Bridges were especially problematic. Since river crossings were limited, vehicles naturally gathered at these points. A single stalled wagon could block hundreds behind it. Delays lasting several hours were normal. Waterways also experienced congestion. Before railways became widespread, rivers and canals served as major transportation routes. In busy ports, ships sometimes waited days for docking space. Narrow canals forced boats to line up in long queues, creating what could be described as water-based traffic jams. As the Industrial Revolution accelerated urban growth, it became clear that traditional surface transportation could not handle the demand. City planners needed a new solution. In 1863, London introduced the world's first underground railway system, known as the Metropolitan Railway. One of its primary goals was to reduce surface congestion caused by horse-drawn vehicles. For the first time in history, passengers could travel beneath the crowded streets. It was a revolutionary step in urban planning. In many ways, traffic jams helped inspire the development of modern public transportation systems. Then came the automobile. When cars began appearing in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, many believed traffic congestion would disappear forever. Cars were faster. They did not require feeding. They did not produce manure. Streets became cleaner almost immediately. For a short time, it seemed like the perfect solution. However, as cars became affordable and production increased, especially after Henry Ford introduced assembly line manufacturing, vehicle ownership expanded rapidly. More cars filled the streets. Roads were widened. Traffic signals were invented. Highways were constructed. Yet congestion returned. The vehicles had changed, but the underlying issue remained the same: too many people trying to move through limited space at the same time. Traffic jams are not caused by cars themselves. They are caused by urban density, economic activity, and human movement. The same forces that filled Victorian streets with horse-drawn wagons now fill modern highways with automobiles. When we imagine the past, we often picture quiet streets and a slower pace of life. But reality was different. Cities were loud, busy, and crowded. Instead of horns, there were shouted commands. Instead of engines revving, there were iron wheels grinding against stone. Instead of gasoline fumes, there was the smell of stables. The experience of waiting, of being stuck, has remained remarkably similar. History teaches us something important. Every major transportation innovation solves one problem but eventually creates another. Horses replaced walking for speed. Cars replaced horses for cleanliness and efficiency. In the future, electric vehicles, autonomous systems, or advanced public transport may reshape our cities again. But as long as populations grow and people need to move, some form of congestion will always exist. Traffic jams are not a modern curse. They are a reflection of growth, trade, and civilization itself. They show that cities are alive and active. They reveal the constant challenge of balancing movement with space. Long before traffic lights turned red, people were already waiting in line. Long before engines roared, cities were already crowded. The tools of transportation may change, but the human experience of congestion remains the same. Perhaps, hundreds of years from now, future generations will look back at our highways and wonder how we tolerated such delays. And they may discover that just like the people of the 19th century, we too were part of a long story, a story of cities growing faster than their roads. And that story began long before the first car ever touched the street.